Let me ask you something. A sitting U.S. president is waging a war on Iran. American troops are being mobilized. Warships are in the Persian Gulf. Paratroopers are on standby. And what is the commander-in-chief doing? He's at a Saudi investment summit telling the crowd he likes to hang around with losers and then offering to answer questions about sex. I'm not joking. That actually happened this week. During an active military conflict, and that right there tells you everything you need to know about the single most dangerous period in American foreign policy in a generation. Welcome back. Let's get into it. So here's the scene. Trump is speaking at the Future Investment Initiative. That's the Saudi Crown Prince MBS's summit in Miami on Friday. He says, and I'm going to quote this directly so you know I'm not making it up, "You got a lot of losers, mostly losers. Fortunately, it's a good thing to have a lot of losers. I always like to hang around with losers, actually, because it makes me feel better." And Twitter lost its mind. People said it explains his cabinet. People said it explains why everyone gets fired. Scaramucci, yes, the guy who lasted 11 days as White House communications director, said it out loud. But here's the thing. Those people are only half right. Because I don't think this is just about ego. I think this is about insecurity, and it has direct consequences for how America is conducting this war. Think about what Trump does with talented people. Steve Bannon, whatever you think of him, and I think he's a dangerous ideologue, is sharp. The second Bannon threatened to outshine Trump, he was gone. H.R. McMaster, John Kelly, James Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, for God's sake, all pushed out. Why? Because they had their own credibility, their own standing, and their own backbone. Rex Tillerson, Trump literally said, "I could beat him on an IQ test." That is a man frightened of anyone smarter than him. So what do you get instead? You get Steve Witko, a real estate guy who has known Trump for 40 years and who, by all accounts, just defers to him completely. You get Jared Kushner, who has to play nice because Trump is literally his father-in-law. And you get Marco Rubio, a man Trump used to call Little Marco, now wearing oversized shoes because Trump told everyone in the cabinet to buy black floor-shine shoes, and Rubio obeyed. I want you to sit with that image. A senior U.S. senator, a man genuinely more intelligent than his boss, wearing shoes 3 sizes too big because the president said so. That is your foreign policy team for the most volatile military situation since Iraq. And before we move on, just so you understand the stakes, this week Trump was asked by Fox News' Dana Perino what life is like inside Iran right now. Are people eating? Do they have clean water? What's happening on the ground? And guess what? Instead of giving an answer, he complimented her looks, told her she's better looking now than when he first met her. That's your commander-in-chief. Let's talk about the war he started. Let's separate the spin from the reality, because you're being told 2 very different things depending on which channel you watch. Pete Hegseth, Popgun Pete, has been telling you Iran is crushed, destroyed, and done. They've got nothing left. Here's what American intelligence is actually saying. 1/3 of Iranian missiles have been destroyed. If Iran had over 3,000 ballistic missiles going into 2025, that means they may still have more than 1,000 left. And drones, very cheap to make, easy to replace, and possibly being resupplied by Russia as we speak. 4 weeks in war, and they hit an American airbase in Saudi Arabia, injuring 12 personnel. They hit an industrial zone in Abu Dhabi. They've hit Oman. They struck Jerusalem and Tel Aviv overnight. Does that sound like a regime that's about to surrender? Now let's talk about the so-called negotiations, because there aren't any. And I mean that literally. There are no negotiations happening right now. What there has been is weeks of Steve Witko, real estate developer, messaging the Iranian foreign minister asking, "Are you ready to give up yet?" The Americans tried to do what they did in Venezuela, find someone inside the regime willing to break ranks. They reached out to the Iranian parliament speaker, Ghalibaf, asked him to meet them in Pakistan, said J.D. Vance himself might show up. Ghalibaf publicly rejected it. So who do they try next? Nobody. They're completely struck. And here's why no deal is coming. The U.S. ultimatum has 15 points. The headline demands, permanently dismantle your civilian nuclear program, limit your ballistic missiles, severe ties with Hezbollah, the Houthis, and every militia in Iraq. And what Iran respond? The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. They don't promise not to attack our allies. They don't give up the nuclear program. And by the way, Iran is asking to pay for reparations for the war damage and get all our troops out of the Middle East. You don't need to be a diplomat to see that these are not two sides edging toward a deal. These are two sides screaming their maximum demands across a room. And here's the thing that really matters. Iran isn't going to negotiate until America declares a ceasefire. That's their position. So Trump can give all the 10-day ultimatums he wants. Nothing is happening. Which brings us to the question everyone is dancing around, but nobody in the mainstream is answering directly. Are U.S. ground troops going in? Here's what we know. The USS Tripoli, with over 2,000 Marines on board, is in the area. More than 1,000 paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne have been mobilized. But Trump just extended his deadline again, another 10 days on top of everything else. Why? There are two possibilities. One, the military told him they're not in position yet. You can't attack Karg Island, the Iran's major oil hub. Two, Trump is simply spinning because he can't get Iran to capitulate politically, and he doesn't know what else to do. And let me walk you through what a ground operation would actually mean, because I don't think most people understand the geography here. To reach Karg Island, you have to go through the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran controls. Then you're in the northern Persian Gulf, only 30 kilometers from the Iranian mainland. So even if you took Karg, Iranian forces on the coast can fire missiles, drones, and small boats at you indefinitely. And if you take Karg and cut off 90% of Iranian oil exports, global oil prices will explode immediately. Even if America doesn't care because they have their own oil, the rest of the world does. And if Iran still doesn't surrender after that, do you go to the mainland? Iran has 3 times the population of Iraq. It's not desert, it's have mountains. And everyone here remembers what happened in Iraq in 2003. Bill Kristol, one of the architects of that Iraq war, put it plainly this week. If ground troops are deployed, it will be done almost completely on the fly with virtually no planning or preparation. Such a decision would be among the most reckless deployments in American military history. The Trump camp is wishing, genuinely wishing, that a limited ground operation turns this into Venezuela, gets some insider to fold, gets the regime to crack. I am not convinced Iran becomes Venezuela, not even close. Trump wanted Greenland, now he's giving away the world's most important waterway. I need to talk about the Strait of Hormuz because what is happening here is staggering and it's not getting enough attention. 25% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. It is the single most strategically important waterway on the planet. And this week, Marco Rubio told G7 foreign ministers that a potential end state for this conflict is Iran collecting tolls on ships passing through the strait. Listen that again. Iran collecting tolls on the world's most important shipping lane. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, essentially said, if Iranian ships, Chinese ships, Indian ships want to go through, that's fine. So who's determining who goes through? It is not America, it is Iran. And Trump himself flip-flopped in a cabinet meeting, saying America doesn't really need the strait anyway because the U.S. has its own oil. 3 months ago, Trump was saying America must have Greenland because controlling the waterways around it is a vital strategic interest. 3 months later, 25% of the world's oil can be controlled by the country America is at war with, and they're saying other people can sort it out. This isn't strategy. This is a man who picked a fight he didn't think through, realized he can't win it cleanly, and is now trying to blame NATO, blame Europe, blame India, blame China for not stepping in. So this is the level of dealing of this idiot.
Now I want to turn to Russia and Ukraine because what's happening here is arguably the most scandalous foreign policy story of this entire presidency. And it's being buried under the Iran noise. Finnish President Alexander Stubb said it out loud this week. Russia is providing intelligence to Iran. Intelligence about U.S. warships, U.S. warplanes, U.S. troop movements. Information that could get American soldiers killed. And Trump's response when asked about it? He said, "Well, we give intelligence to Ukraine, so I guess that's fair." No, it is not fair. It is not even remotely comparable. Vladimir Putin is threatening European security, killing Ukrainian civilians, and blackmailing America by saying, "We will help Iran kill your troops unless you abandon Ukraine." And Trump's response is, "Oh well, both sides do it." Art of the deal. Meanwhile, here's what's happening on the Ukraine front, and Zelensky said the quiet part out loud this week, which is why Rubio was in France desperately trying to clean it up. The Americans have been telling Ukraine, if you want security guarantees, you have to hand over the entire Donetsk region to Russia. Ukraine currently holds about 20% of Donetsk. That 20% is a fortified defensive belt protecting the rest of the country. Russia has been trying to take it for years and has taken catastrophic casualties doing so. And Steve Witko, the real estate developer running U.S. foreign policy, reportedly said in a room with Zelensky present, "Why don't you just give them Donetsk? They all speak Russian anyway." Well, they don't all speak Russian. And Zelensky said no. Europe pushed back. And now 5 months later, the U.S. is still trying to pressure Ukraine into surrender, while simultaneously lifting sanctions on Russia, waiving restrictions on their maritime oil exports, and watching Russia's oil revenues recover from a 47% decline. Think about that. Russia was in an economic vice. The pressure was working, and the Trump administration let them out, not because of any strategic gain, but because they got distracted by Iran and needed oil prices to stay manageable. But here's the thing, and this is the bit that gives me some hope. Ukraine is not sitting still. Zelensky flew to Riyadh this week, not for a photo op. He signed a defense cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia. Ukraine is supplying anti-drone interceptors to Gulf states, the same interceptors the U.S. is running short on in the region. Ukrainian experts are on the ground helping with air defense. Ukraine has found a way to make itself indispensable to the Gulf states, to Europe, to anyone who needs drone expertise without needing America to do it. Europe is being forced to accelerate its own military technology. Gulf states are building new security relationships. The world is reorganizing itself around the reality that you cannot count on Washington right now. So let me bring this all together, because I think the picture is actually quite clear once you strip away the noise. Donald Trump went into a war with Iran based on Israeli intelligence telling him the population would rise up and the regime would collapse. It didn't happen. 4 weeks in, Iran is still fighting, still retaliating, still refusing to negotiate. Trump now has 3 choices. 1, he launches a ground operation, probably without proper planning, probably into an operation that military experts are calling potentially the most reckless in modern American history. 2, he takes some face-saving limited action, claims victory, and declares the war is done, convinces nobody but his base. 3, some form of deal gets reached that looks nothing like the 15-point ultimatum he issued, and he calls it a win anyway. Meanwhile,
Russia is killing American credibility in slow motion. Ukraine is being squeezed into giving up territory it bled for, and the world's most important waterway may end up under the control of the country America just spent a month bombing. This is not winning. This is chaos being sold as strategy. And at the center of it all is a man who told a Saudi investment summit that he likes to hang around with losers because it makes him feel better. Make of that what you will. If this video helped you understand what's actually happening, then subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with someone who's only getting the headline version. I'll be back with the next update as this develops, and it will develop. I'll see you in the next one.